Hi, you're listening to Childless and Moving Onward. This is the place where we talk about thriving in life when you're a woman who is childless, not by choice, regardless of the road that brought you to childlessness. Hi, and welcome to episode 57 of Childless and Moving Onward. I'm your host, Gail Miller. I'm a physician, life coach, and a speaker. And I'm also childless by circumstance and not by choice. So I get your pain. In this podcast, there's a mix of emotions because navigating our childless experiences is complex. It's never easy. It's usually not even simple to explain. But if you're looking for support, this is the place. One of the things that makes this journey complex is the never-ending need to explain ourselves. Now, whether or not we have to or should is one thing, but I'm talking about others' expectations. There is the need to explain what childless not by choice means. Others think there's a need for us to explain why we're childless. For those who have dealt with infertility, others think they're entitled to know what treatments, etc. For those who have chronic illness, people think it's their right to know what that's about. And of course, with all of this comes advice, unwanted advice, but it goes on and on. But what's equally troubling is we often feel the need to answer, to explain, and to make the case that what we've been through has been traumatic. And we do it because what we want is validation. And the reality is that frequently, I would say the majority of the time, we won't get that validation. The judgment of others is incessant. Now, judgment is a human experience or action, behavior. But in recent years, it's become increasingly dominant. And at times, it's unrelenting. Whether it's through social media, casual conversations, or societal norms, people seem quicker than ever to form opinions about others' lives without any understanding of the full context. And for those of us who are childless, not by choice, the judgment feels especially damaging and isolating. People with zero understanding of our circumstance decide they know better. And even worse is that they decide they know what they would do if they were in our shoes. Unsolicited advice, insensitive comments, or assumptions about our worth and happiness being tied to motherhood, all of that follows from that judgment. The constant judgment adds an extra layer of pain to an already difficult journey. It's a reminder of how much work still needs to be done to create a more compassionate and inclusive world. One where any path in life is respected and validated. But from this, we feel the need for validation. Why? Now, in general, whether childless or not, people feel the need for validation from others because it's human nature to want to feel seen, heard, and understood. It's comforting to experience others' recognition of our struggles, our emotions, or achievements. It helps us feel like we're not alone. Validation helps us feel connected to others. It's a way of being reassured that what we're going through is real and matters. On a deeper level, validation also helps build confidence in our own feelings and decisions. When someone acknowledges that what we're experiencing is real, it reinforces that what we're feeling is legitimate. Now, in reality, we need to be careful about all of this. Again, whether it's about being childless or something else, because balance is important. Too much need for external validation, and some would say any need, leaves us questioning ourselves when that validation isn't there. Specific to being childless not by choice, the need for validation usually develops because of entrenched societal expectations that we've internalized, because they're so deeply rooted that we've allowed ourselves to be convinced that those expectations are correct and the only correct way to live life. Society mostly glorifies parenthood, especially motherhood. Glorifies motherhood as the ultimate fulfillment for women. Not just as the ultimate fulfillment, but that it should be the only way to have a meaningful life. How does that affect us? Well, it leaves most of us who are childless at some point feeling excluded or less than. The idea that motherhood is a defining role for women is reinforced by public celebrations, social media posts, and even casual comments. When you're childless not by choice, this pressure from society can make you feel inadequate, and you long for your experiences and your emotions to be acknowledged as valid. On an individual level, the need for validation can also be tied to emotional wounds and past experiences, including those experiences that don't have anything to do with being involuntarily childless. Now, for those who are childless not by choice, this might show up as a need for others to recognize the pain of your situation and affirm your worth beyond traditional roles like motherhood. When it comes specifically to being childless not by choice, it's common to feel the need for validation of your pain. After all, the pain others experience with loss is usually validated, right? Someone dies, the pain from that is usually validated by others. Unfortunately, though, the pain of being childless not by choice is often misunderstood and also very often not considered a loss. Being involuntarily childless can feel marginalizing because this grief isn't seen as legitimate or comparable to other losses. The grief of involuntary childlessness seems abstract to many because it revolves around the loss of an imagined future with children, and not a material event physically present. For so many, it's difficult to empathize or recognize this emotional toll. And so what's left is a feeling of being misunderstood and unsupported. It's a really emotionally vulnerable place to be. It's scary. It's isolating. Even when you're in a room full of people, it can feel excruciatingly lonely. Any negative perceptions about ourselves, which are really common, they explode in intensity. The doubts about our femininity and worth, also common, multiply, and then self-esteem is eroded. And then you add to all of this the judgment about the reasons for childlessness. The judgment of whether somebody else considers it to be not by choice. The judgment about each person's circumstances. Where does validation come in with all of this? Well, validation is an acknowledgement that the pain of unwanted childlessness is real, is profound, and it matters. It's an acknowledgement that regardless of the circumstances, if our childlessness is unwanted, then it is not by choice. Validation helps to establish that the painful emotions are legitimate. It can help lessen the feelings of isolation. The problem is that this much needed validation is often lacking. The pain of being childless goes unrecognized, or it's not believed way too often. The judgment of our circumstances is anything but validating. The lack of belief that it's not by choice is demeaning, and it's detrimental. Why depend on others to provide that validation? When we don't depend on them, that can lead to emotional independence and boost self-confidence. When you're depending on external validation, your emotional well-being becomes tied to others' approval. Your self-worth is affected by others' opinions. So you lose the ability to recognize your own intrinsic value. Even when external validation is there, any positive result of it on your self-view is usually short-lived. That doesn't lead to long-lasting self-satisfaction. On the other hand, though, self-validation allows you to find contentment from within. You learn to recognize your worth because you're not relying on others to define it. What comes with that is you build a resilience, making it easier to face setbacks or criticisms. Building that self-validation empowers you to also build emotional stability and confidence. This makes finding peace with your situation possible. That doesn't mean you're okay with being childless. It's not like you're saying, yeah, I'm happy I don't have kids. It means you're able to find, or you're able to face your reality. And it also means you're able to find other sources of meaning in your life. It means you're able to find other sources of fulfillment. All of this, and at the same time, it enables you to honor the pain you carry with you. So let's talk about how you can start to cultivate a stronger sense of self-worth without relying on external approval that you may not ever get when it comes to being childless, not by choice. The first step is to acknowledge your emotions. Name what you're feeling, and don't judge the feeling. Don't judge yourself. But instead of saying, I'm sad or I'm angry, try, I'm feeling sad or I'm feeling angry. Because that distinguishes between you as a person and your feelings. You are not your feelings, but accept that your feelings are valid. Next is to replace thoughts that are critical of yourself and replace it with flipped around affirmations. So for example, instead of saying, I'm a failure, say, I did my best under the circumstances. And honestly reflect on yourself. Reflect on your actions and your experiences. Reflect on them without judging them, without judging yourself. Understand that you and your reactions are shaped by your experiences and your circumstances, even if you don't entirely agree with your own reactions. Recognize that your actions are based on what you knew at the time. Learning to validate yourself is important because it allows you to find peace and self-acceptance from within, no matter what others think or say. And remember, you are worthy. That's it for this week. I'll be back with you next week. I appreciate you listening. I hope this episode was helpful to you. If you liked what you heard, schedule a free discovery call with me to see how I can help you to feel worthy and live a fulfilling life. To schedule, click on the link in the episode notes, or you can find it on my website at pathonward.com. You can also see more from me on Instagram at Childless Path Onward and Facebook and YouTube at Path Onward. Until next week, thanks again for listening.